At the heart of the Galactic University's sprawling campus, nestled in the bustling orbit of a gas giant, a crowd had gathered. Alien students and scholars from dozens of star systems filled the observation amphitheater, their voices buzzing with anticipation. Today was the day of the famed Survival Symposium, a tradition where the galaxy's most promising minds competed to solve the toughest survival problems across the stars. Professor Servath, the distinguished green-skinned Thaler scientist, stood at the center stage. His multifaceted eyes scanned the eager audience, reflecting the swirling colors of the gas giant below. Known for his sharp mind and dry wit, Servath rarely wasted words, but when he spoke, everyone listened. "Welcome, esteemed cadets and guests," he began, his voice calm but commanding. "Today, we test not just your technical skill, but your creativity, your ability to adapt, and your understanding of nature itself." Servath gestured to a holographic display that shimmered into existence behind him, showing a rugged, storm-lashed moon called Virex 9. The moon was infamous for its harsh weather. Acidic winds, sudden temperature drops, and violent seismic tremors. Survival there required more than technology. It demanded ingenuity. "Your challenge," Servath announced, "is to build a fully functional shelter on Virex 9 within 1 hour. The shelter must protect against all environmental hazards and maintain breathable air and warmth for at least 6 hours. A murmur passed through the crowd. Many species had tried, and failed, to meet this challenge in under 50 minutes. None had finished earlier. Eli Tran sat quietly among the contestants, a human engineer from Earth. Unlike the others, he wore simple clothes, carried no visible gadgets beyond a small multi-tool at his belt, and seemed oddly relaxed. His dark eyes calmly scanned the crowd, then the holographic moon. To many, he looked out of place, an unassuming figure in a sea of aliens bristling with advanced technology. Beside Eli, a pair of Luminar twins exchanged doubtful looks. Their species specialized in fast construction using molecular assemblers and nanotech scaffolds. "You do realize this challenge is meant for the technologically gifted," one whispered. Eli only smiled faintly. The countdown began, and a low hum filled the air as the contest area materialized on the moon's surface inside a simulated environment. The air shifted instantly from the calm university atmosphere to the harsh, biting chill of Virex 9. Acid mist hung thickly, and distant tremors shook the ground beneath their feet. Alien contestants immediately activated their drones, which buzzed around gathering raw materials with mechanical precision. They unfolded energy shields, deployed force fields, and began assembling complex shelters with practiced efficiency. Eli, however, did something different. He bent down, letting his hands brush against the cold, rough surface. He picked up stones, feeling their weight and texture. Nearby, a cluster of flexible vines swayed gently, and Eli reached out, examining their strength. Without a word, he began moving, carefully, methodically, with a clear plan already forming in his mind. As the other cadets worked frantically with technology, Eli's approach was simple and direct, powered by experience and intuition rather than machines. Around him, the first few minutes ticked by, and the crowd started to notice. Professor Servath's multifaceted eyes narrowed in curiosity. This human, quiet and unassuming, was working at a pace and with a confidence no one expected. The simulated storm on Virex 9 raged around the contestants as they scrambled to prove their worth. Acidic winds whipped across the rocky surface, and the air shimmered with an otherworldly chill that seemed to seep into every fiber. The challenge was not just about speed, but about survival, lasting the brutal elements without modern conveniences. Professor Servath's voice echoed through the communication channel, calm and precise. "Remember, cadets, your shelter must withstand the moon's acid rains, shifting ground, and temperature swings from below freezing to scorching heat. The air inside must remain breathable, and warmth must be maintained for at least 6 hours. All tools are permitted, but the clock does not stop for innovation. The cadets nodded, many mentally reviewing their blueprints and protocols. For the majority, survival meant harnessing their species' technological strengths. The Luminar twins coordinated with their nanodromes to assemble a shimmering membrane that promised to repel acid and retain heat. A group of silicon-based beings called the Krith began molding the rocky soil into compact bricks using controlled thermal bursts. Eli, meanwhile, took a deep breath, his lungs filling with the alien air simulation. He glanced around at the flurry of technological activity, and then back to the natural materials scattered at his feet. Jagged stones, thick vines, and a strange sap oozing from a nearby plant. The professor had said, all tools are permitted, but Eli knew that his best advantage wasn't some advanced device. It was his understanding of nature and how to work with it. He knelt, selecting stones carefully, each one with a flat edge to ensure a stable foundation. With practiced hands, he began stacking the stones into a triangular frame, a shape he knew would best withstand pressure from the storms and tremors. He weaved the vines tightly around the frame, binding the stones into place like ancient masonry. Nearby, some cadets looked on with skepticism. One Thaler engineer raised an eyebrow. "Primitive," she muttered under her breath. Eli smiled softly. Sometimes primitive is just undiscovered technology. As the clock ticked down, the stakes rose. The Luminar twins' nanomembranes flickered under the acidic rain, requiring constant maintenance. The Krith bricks cracked under the first tremors, forcing repairs. Meanwhile, Eli's structure grew steadily and silently. He then noticed the sap dripping from a thorny plant, sticky and pliable. Carefully, he collected some in a small container and tested its adhesive properties. It was flexible and strong, perfect for sealing gaps and waterproofing the shelter's walls. With a keen eye, he fashioned a small vent system using broad leaves, angled to direct fresh air from a natural thermal vent nearby, while preventing rain from entering. This simple design would keep the shelter breathable without complex filters. Around him, the other contestants adjusted their strategies. Some began incorporating natural materials after watching Eli's progress. Whispers spread through the crowd. What is he doing differently? Back in the observation chamber, Professor Xirvath studied the data feed carefully. "Interesting," he murmured. "The human isn't just building a shelter. He's building a system, one that blends with the environment rather than fighting it." Time passed, but Eli's quiet confidence remained steady. The storm outside intensified, and the simulated temperature plummeted, but inside his mind, Eli focused on balance, between strength and flexibility, simplicity and resilience. The hourglass had just begun turning, but little did anyone know, the true surprise was yet to come. As the storm outside Varex 9's simulation intensified, alien cadets doubled their efforts. High above the rocky terrain, sleek drones buzzed in precise formations, scanning and gathering the scattered resources with mechanical accuracy. The Luminar twins directed their nanotech assemblers, weaving delicate but strong membranes that shimmered under the acidic rain. Their fingers moved in coordinated rhythm, activating energy fields and sensors to monitor every structural detail. Nearby, a team of Krith engineers used focused heat bursts to shape the moon's rocky soil into dense bricks. The bricks clicked together, forming the basis of a shelter meant to resist tremors and acid alike. Their design was advanced, modular, adaptable, and backed by centuries of trial and error. The Krith were confident they could finish well within the hour. Yet amid this display of cutting-edge technology, Eli Tran's presence seemed almost incongruous. Where others relied on drones and energy shields, Eli crouched low, methodically working with nothing more than stones, vines, and sap. His movements were deliberate, his touch gentle yet sure. He arranged his materials carefully, stacking and binding with an artisan's care. The alien cadets exchanged curious glances. The Thaler engineer who had whispered primitive now watched him with a mix of confusion and intrigue. The Luminar twins paused their drone commands, whispering among themselves. One Luminar, the younger twin named Nira, whispered quietly to her sister, How can he work so fast without tech? It's like he's remembering something. The older twin smiled faintly. Maybe Earth's survival skills aren't just stories. Eli's approach wasn't flashy or complicated, but it was effective. He'd spent his life camping and hiking on Earth, learning to use natural materials to build quick shelters in wilderness conditions. His mind worked differently. It was rooted in observation, adaptation, and practical knowledge passed down through generations. As the minutes ticked by, Eli finished assembling a triangular stone frame. He then wove vines tightly around it, creating a strong, flexible lattice. The sap he'd collected earlier served as a natural glue, sealing gaps and waterproofing the structure. The small vent system made from broad leaves was angled perfectly to capture warm air from the thermal vent while keeping moisture out. The alien cadets struggled to maintain their own complex systems. Nanomembranes required constant recalibration under acid rain. Energy shields drained power rapidly. Bricks sometimes cracked under the tremors, needing reinforcement. Their technology was impressive but demanding. Eli's shelter, by contrast, seemed to grow quietly and steadily, as if nature itself lent him strength. Professor Xurvath observed with growing fascination. The human's method is unlike any I've seen. Instead of bending the environment to his will, he's working with it, integrating his design into the landscape. In the crowd, whispers spread. Can natural materials outperform nanotech? Is this human intuition something we underestimated? Eli's calm presence amid the technological storm raised questions about what true survival meant. Was it raw power or quiet ingenuity? Was it complex systems or adaptive simplicity? As the storm's winds howled and the clock continued its relentless countdown, one thing was clear. The human shelter was becoming something remarkable. And fast. While the alien cadets poured energy into their advanced tools and intricate designs, Eli Tran stayed grounded in a different rhythm. One guided by experience, intuition, and a deep respect for the natural world. His hands moved steadily and confidently, carefully weaving together materials as old as time. He surveyed the terrain around him, noting how the moon's surface formed natural pockets and ledges. Instead of building straight walls like many others, Eli decided to work with the land itself. He positioned his stone frame to rest snugly against a rocky outcrop, allowing the natural formation to serve as one side of the shelter, adding strength and insulation. The acidic winds whipped sharply, but Eli's shelter was already taking shape into a solid, compact design. He layered the vines in tight crisscrosses, creating a flexible lattice that could sway without breaking, a technique honed from countless nights camping in Earth's forests. To seal the structure, he coated the exterior with the sticky sap, which dried quickly to form a waterproof, weather-resistant shell. Nearby, a group of young alien cadets watched, fascinated by the contrast. Their technology was flashy, but Eli's solution was elegant in its simplicity. One Luminar cadet approached cautiously. "How did you know to use the sap like that?" she asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. Eli smiled warmly. "On Earth, we learn to look for the smallest clues nature gives us. That sap, it's like glue and plastic rolled into one. It seals and protects, just like some synthetic materials, but without the need for power or repairs." He gestured to his vent system. The leaves channel warm air from a natural heat source beneath us. No complicated filters needed, just smart placement. The Luminar's eyes widened. "It's amazing. You're not just building a shelter. You're working with the environment." Eli nodded. "That's the key. You don't fight nature. You partner with it." Meanwhile, the other cadets continued their frantic efforts. The Krith team's bricks began to crack under pressure, and the Luminar's membranes developed small tears in the acid rain, requiring constant patching. The high-tech solutions, while impressive, demanded constant attention and adjustment. Professor Xurvath's gaze remained fixed on Eli's shelter. "Remarkable," he murmured to himself. "This is not just construction, it is adaptive engineering." As Eli finished the final touches, He tested the shelter's entrance by pressing a stone slab against the opening, sealing it tightly but leaving enough airflow through the leaf vents. He crouched inside, feeling the air remain calm despite the raging storm outside. The minutes passed quickly, but Ila's shelter was almost complete. The crowd's attention shifted fully toward the human, the unassuming figure who had quietly outpaced them all. A few alien cadets whispered to each other, exchanging looks of admiration. "Maybe we've underestimated Earth's survival skills," one said. Eli glanced back at the assembled group and gave a modest shrug. For him, this was second nature, a blend of instinct, knowledge, and respect for the natural world. The challenge wasn't just about speed. It was about understanding. As the storm rumbled louder and the timer edged closer to its halfway mark, Ila's shelter stood ready, a testament to human ingenuity. Simple, smart, and built to last. The clock's steady countdown echoed across the rocky surface of Virex 9's simulation. Just 10 minutes had passed since the challenge began, but Ela Tran was already stepping away from his shelter, dusting his hands lightly. The compact, triangular structure stood firm against the relentless storm battering the moon's surface, its vines and stones glistening under the acidic rain. Around him, alien cadets were still racing against time, their high-tech shelters only half assembled. The Luminar twins struggled to repair a tear in their shimmering membrane, while the Krith engineers frantically reinforced cracked bricks. Drones buzzed erratically, their operators shouting instructions and recalibrating settings. A hush began to spread through the observation amphitheater. Professor Xervath's multifaceted eyes narrowed, an expression of intrigued surprise crossing his face. 10 minutes, he murmured. Impossible. The crowd watched, holding their breath, as the simulation storm intensified. Winds gusting sharply, rain falling in sheets of corrosive acid, and the ground trembling beneath sudden quakes. All around, shelters shuddered and groaned under the harsh test. But Ila's shelter held steady. The stone frame, reinforced by the intertwined vines, flexed just enough to absorb the tremors without cracking. The sap coating hardened to a resilient shell, keeping the acidic rain at bay. The leaf vents channeled warm air from a nearby thermal fissure, maintaining a steady, breathable atmosphere inside. A quiet murmur rose among the onlookers. This was more than a shelter. It was a masterpiece of adaptive design, combining natural materials with clever engineering to survive the worst the moon could throw at it. Professor Xervath's voice crackled through the channel again. Human, confirmed status. Ila's voice was steady. Shelter is sealed and stable. Temperature inside is holding steady at 22 degrees Celsius. Air quality is good. I estimate it will remain habitable for at least 6 hours. There was a pause, then a ripple of astonished applause from some of the alien spectators. This was unprecedented. Across the field, other cadets accelerated their efforts, but the complexity of their technology slowed them down. Their shelters required constant adjustments, and many struggled to maintain the integrity of their structures against the storm's assault. The Luminar twins looked over at Ila's shelter, their pride tempered by awe. "He finished before we could even get our shields up," one whispered. Eli, meanwhile, remained calm and composed, knowing that the real test was just beginning. The shelter needed to prove its endurance over time, not just speed of assembly. He crouched near the entrance, monitoring the temperature and humidity with a small handheld sensor. The values remained stable, even as the storm showed no signs of weakening. His design was holding. On the observation deck, Professor Xervath made a note in his datapad. "This is more than engineering. It's an instinctive harmony with the environment, a lesson many advanced species could learn." The crowd began to buzz with excitement. The human had not only met the challenge, he had shattered expectations. Where others relied on complex machines and high-tech solutions, Ila's shelter was a testament to simplicity, adaptability, and human ingenuity. As the storm raged on, the challenge shifted from construction to endurance. Would Ela's shelter withstand the relentless forces of Virex 9 longer than any other? The answer would soon become clear. The storm outside Virex 9's simulation chamber raged with unrelenting fury. Acid rain hammered down in sheets, winds howled like ancient beasts, and seismic tremors shook the ground with unpredictable force. Inside the shelters, the true test had begun. Eli Tran sat quietly within his compact stone and vine shelter, monitoring small instruments that measured temperature, air quality, and humidity. The values on his handheld device remained remarkably steady. The temperature hovered comfortably near 22 degrees Celsius, while the air sensors showed clean, breathable atmosphere with no signs of contamination. His clever venting system, using broad leaves positioned to catch warm thermal currents, was doing its job perfectly. Outside, other shelters fared less well. The Luminar Twins' nanotech membrane shimmered but was beginning to tear in places, requiring rapid repairs. Their drones buzzed frantically, reapplying patches and reinforcing weak points. The Krith engineers' brickwork had suffered several fractures from tremors, forcing them to halt construction and focus on repairs instead of completing their shelters. Ela's shelter, however, stood firm, silent, and steady against the storm. In the observation chamber, Professor Xirvath leaned forward, eyes fixed on the data streams. "The human's design," he murmured, "is not only simple but incredibly efficient. It uses the moon's own resources without overtaxing them." Alien cadets exchanged glances filled with surprise and newfound respect. Many had underestimated the power of natural materials combined with smart design. The young Luminar Nira approached Eli cautiously during a brief lull in the challenge. "How did you know your shelter would hold so well against such harsh conditions?" she asked, her voice tinged with admiration. Eli smiled softly. "I've spent a lot of time learning how to read nature. Every plant, every rock has a story. How it grows, how it reacts to weather. I designed the shelter to work with those stories, not against them." He pointed toward the rocky outcrop supporting one side of the shelter. "Using the natural terrain reduces strain on the structure. The vines add flexibility to absorb shock, and the sap seals the walls from moisture. It's like a living system, responding to the environment rather than fighting it." The Luminar nodded thoughtfully. "It's a different kind of engineering, more like a partnership." As the storm intensified, a sudden tremor shook the simulation chamber violently. Across the field, some high-tech shelters wobbled, their energy shields flickering as power demand spiked. But Eli's stone frame absorbed the shock with barely a shift. The crowd gasped softly, then erupted in whispers of approval. Professor Xirvath raised a tentacle, calling for silence. "This human's shelter is a testament to balance, between strength and flexibility, simplicity and resilience. It reminds us that sometimes the most advanced technology cannot replace understanding." The storm continued for hours, and Eli's shelter remained a quiet haven amid chaos. Other cadets grew weary, their advanced tools drained of power or damage, while Eli's shelter needed only the earth and his careful craftsmanship. As the storm finally began to abate, the professor's voice rang out, clear and proud. "The challenge is complete. Human ingenuity has set a new standard." Eli stepped out from his shelter to applause, not just from humans, but from a galaxy of species who now saw Earth's resilience in a new light. The storm over Virex 9's simulation finally began to subside, the acid rain tapering off to gentle drizzles, and the winds easing into soft whispers. As calm returned to the rocky surface, the contestants emerged from their shelters, tired but alive. The crowds in the Galactic University amphitheater buzzed with excitement, eager to witness the final results. Eli Tran stepped forward, dusting off his simple clothes and flashing a modest smile. Despite finishing far earlier than anyone expected, he remained humble, his focus always on the task, never the applause. Around him, the alien cadets gathered, their expressions a mix of admiration, curiosity, and a touch of envy. Many of them had relied on advanced technology to survive, But Eli had proven that raw ingenuity and respect for nature could surpass even the most complex systems. The Luminar twins approached cautiously. Mara smiled warmly. Your shelter was more than a structure, it was a lesson. You reminded us to listen to the environment, not just control it. Eli nodded. That's how humans have survived for millennia. We learn by watching, adapting, and working with the world around us. Professor Xurvath stepped forward, his multifaceted eyes reflecting a deep respect. Human Eli Tran, you have redefined what it means to survive. Your shelter's speed, durability, and elegance exceeded all expectations. You demonstrate that true strength comes not from overwhelming power, but from understanding and harmony. The crowd erupted in applause. Some of the most advanced species in the galaxy had just witnessed a human outsmart them, not with machines, but with timeless skills honed on a small blue planet. The professor continued, let this be a reminder to all cadets. Technology alone cannot solve every problem. Sometimes, the simplest solutions, grounded in knowledge and respect, are the most powerful. As the applause died down, Eli looked out at the assembly. The once skeptical aliens now regarded him with new eyes. Recognition of humanity's quiet resilience and creativity. A young Krith engineer approached, extending a hand. We underestimated you, human. I hope we can learn from your methods. Eli shook the engineer's hand firmly. And I hope we can learn from each other. Survival is a shared challenge, no matter the species. That night, as the Galactic University's stars glittered overhead, discussions sparked across species and classrooms. Eli's success was not just about building a shelter. It was about bridging worlds and ideas, reminding all that survival required humility and ingenuity in equal measure. The human's achievement would be remembered as a turning point, a moment when the galaxy looked at Earth not just as a distant blue dot, but as a source of inspiration. And somewhere deep inside, Eli smiled quietly, knowing the real challenge had only just begun. Long after the storm simulation had ended and the shelters were cleared from Virex 9's dusty terrain, the memory of Eli Tran's shelter remained, etched not into stone or circuitry, but into the minds of every being who had witnessed it. In the Galactic University's archives, a new case study was already circulating. The human method. Low-tech survival in high-stress environments. It was required reading for engineering and planetary adaptation courses across 12 systems. Diagrams of Eli's vine and stone structure were studied next to holo-simulations of the most advanced shelters. His name, once unknown beyond Earth, now held a quiet reverence among the academic elite. But Eli hadn't stayed to bask in praise. He had politely declined media tours and diplomatic interviews. Instead, he returned home to Earth, a small mountain village tucked beneath the trees, where he'd first learned how to listen to wind, feel the texture of soil, and read the language of leaves. He found peace in the familiar rhythm of Earth, the crunch of boots on a forest trail, the smell of pine after rain, the low crackle of firewood catching flame. But even here, the stars called to him. It wasn't long before a ship arrived at the village's edge, its hull shimmering with the blue-silver hues of Luminar design. A message blinked on the screen. Professor Xurvath invites you to co-develop the Galactic Adaptation Initiative. Eli hesitated only a moment. When he returned to Virex 9, he wasn't alone in his efforts. A coalition had formed, species of every kind, eager to learn from each other. And not just from their technologies, but from their lived experiences, their ancestral knowledge, their mistakes and recoveries. Eli stood at the center of it, not as a leader who gave orders, but as a guide who asked questions others hadn't thought to ask. What's under the ground? What can the wind teach us? Why build against nature when you can build with it? His questions seeded a movement. In time, a new shelter prototype emerged. It wasn't made of vines or stone or shimmering nanofiber, but something entirely new, grown, shaped, and formed by hybrid understanding. Earth's natural wisdom fused with Luminar biofilament, Krith energy buffering, and Torvan atmospheric stabilizers. They called it the symbiotic shelter, a structure that responded to the environment, adapted over time, and could even self-repair using nearby organic material. It was lightweight, breathable, durable, and completely off-grid. The first field test. A joint team of cadets from 4 different planets built one in just 7 minutes. As the results poured in, Professor Servath addressed the council. What we witnessed in Elytran's design wasn't just survival, it was philosophy. It wasn't a shelter to protect one being from nature, but a way to live with nature. That is the human contribution, not dominance, but coexistence through cleverness and humility. Eli sat in the back during that speech, a little uncomfortable with the attention. But as he watched young aliens collaborating, sharing tools and knowledge, he felt something better than pride. He felt purpose. He hadn't come to the stars to impress anyone. He had come to remind them what being human meant. Not just to survive, but to observe. Not just to build, but to understand. Not just to endure, but to adapt, with grace, with courage, and with the quiet confidence of a species that had learned to thrive on a world both beautiful and brutal. The galaxy would remember the shelter he built in 10 minutes, but it would never forget the world of ideas it inspired.